Tonight's story is about pro wrestling journalists, and I think pro wrestling journalists are in a very interesting space. They are indeed real people covering the real world news surrounding a TV show that presents itself as a real contest. And though this may seem odd, it's not uncommon in the entertainment world. We have actors and directors who answer real life questions from reporters, but also use that time to promote their movies and projects. And though this is commonplace in the film and television industry with publications like Variety or The Hollywood Reporter, pro wrestling companies seem to have a great disdain for the pro wrestling journalist. And it seems like they always have. Promoters will complain that spoilers about upcoming storylines or matches would hurt their ability to make money, ultimately exposing the business of pro wrestling and ruining it completely. And as you know, that didn't happen. But it does make sense that you wouldn't want spoilers for your show, considering it takes time and effort to make pro wrestling television. Now, having said that, it doesn't necessarily explain why pro wrestling companies did this in the 90s.
Introducing the new wrestling hotline, Shivani Paul E. Dangerously with Sting.
The three-way relationship between pro wrestling companies, the media who cover pro wrestling companies, and even those who consume pro wrestling media is becoming more dysfunctional by the day. And given that, I think it's important for us to talk about some of the big names in pro wrestling media, some of the most recent criticisms against them from the WWE and fans alike, with some tips to help you avoid falling for fake pro wrestling stories. Let's start out tonight by talking about one specific wrestling journalist, and that is Shawn Ross Sapp. For those who don't know, SRS is a reporter for Fightful. Fightful is a pro wrestling news website. And over the last couple of years, Shawn and Fightful have been responsible for breaking some of the biggest news stories in pro wrestling, such as CM Punk's return to pro wrestling, CM Punk's suspension from pro wrestling, to CM Punk's addition to the WWE roster. However, what people may not know is that he is not only one of the top pro wrestling journalists, he's also one of the top pro wrestling journalists. SRS seems pretty well respected in his field, so it was a little shocking when the WWE's COO, Triple H, had this to say about an alleged report from Fightful.
Fightful and PW Insider reported that Drew Gulak was released by WWE. I just wanted you to clarify on the situation if that was true, and is there anything to do with Ronda Rousey's accusation about sexual?
Well, first of all, if you're going to cite news sources, pick good ones. That's where I would start. Credible, really, maybe.
Fightful had reported that Drew Gulak had been released, but in reality, his contract was not being renewed, and that's the point Triple H was trying to make. And I gotta say, that's a pretty pedantic correction, so I'm really, really glad to see that Triple H must be part of the internet wrestling community. There's nothing we love more than making a slight correction of what someone said and using that to discredit their entire point. Triple H is on squared circle, that's what I'm saying. He's probably in the Jim Cornette subreddit too. Allegedly, Triple H took exception to the reports that Gulak's employment was terminated due to a backstage incident where he allegedly grabbed Ronda Rousey's sweatpants string while shaking her hand. Ultimately, this seemed to be a big misunderstanding, as Fightful did not report that Gulak's termination was due to the Ronda Rousey incident. Shawn Ross Sapp stated that Triple H had given him a call directly to reach out to talk over the incident, and even went one step further, sending SRS this token of apology.
WWE sent me French cheeses as a token of apology.
A nice soft cheese and a handwritten note is always a good apology. I do find it odd, though, how quickly Triple H was to call Shawn Ross Sapp and those at Fightful unreliable. I mean, this is the guy who has access to your weekly show rundowns. Soon Triple H is going to be saying he planted fake evidence for SRS in a diss track. Face it, Trips, you got holes in your system like OVO. But it's not just Triple H's answer that had people on the internet talking. It was also about the person who asked the question. A 21-year-old French freelance journalist named Louis Charpiot asked the question of Triple H. Charpiot told the Post Wrestling that he did receive some very interesting feedback from a WWE PR person about his question.
One of the PR, as soon as I sent my question to Triple H, said to me, "What a dumb thing to do." And so I knew there was going to be backlash online.
Sorry, Lucas. Somebody from WPR said that was a dumb thing to do, to ask your question?
Yeah, right after I asked it, he looked at me and said, "What a dumb thing to do."
Now, this would be something I expect a minister of propaganda to say, or a mid-level Far Cry boss as they're hauling you off to the gulag, but this is a WWE press conference. But the backlash for Lucas didn't stop with WWE PR, as strangers on the internet found his social media profiles and began to hound him. Now, unfortunately, while I do expect some fans of pro wrestling to do this sort of thing, and to those people I say, stop it. What you're doing is not normal behavior. It was the French journalist's colleagues in the room that really gave me concern.
I heard almost immediately after I said the name Drew Gulak that there was a sense in the room of, why is he asking that question? What's his problem? You can hear in the audio, I believe, right after the question, some groans, may not be the right term in English, but people were like, gosh, as if I was attacking
Gasps.
their leader or whatever.
He was paid to be there. He has a job to do, and not the jobs that Finn Balor does every week, but they are still very important. But I do find it odd that asking one run-of-the-mill question prompted such a response from WWE PR and fans alike. When a news story about a possible scandal involving an athlete breaks, and then said athlete is no longer on the team, you better believe the first thing Monday morning that coach is getting asked is, why was so-and-so released? Why would it be any different for the world of pro wrestling? And if being a journalist asking such question of WWE officials is enough to make you a divisive online personality, what does that mean for journalists who are already divisive online personalities? And if we're going to be talking divisive online personal wrestling journalism, there is no better example than Dave Meltzer. For those who don't know, Dave Meltzer is essentially the godfather of the dirt sheet. Well, at least that's who Wikipedia credits as being the creator. His Pro Wrestling Observer newsletter, which started in 1982, was the precursor to all pro wrestling insider magazines and news websites you see. And when you see this man's office, you know he must have all of the pro wrestling secrets. I don't know about you, but I do not want to challenge Dave Meltzer on his reporting. Look at the man's office. It looks like he's kept every receipt in triplicate. It looks like he has the script for WrestleMania 46 in there. It looks like he has the future contract negotiations of Becky Lynch and Seth Rollins' kid already in there. But I digress. It's not Dave's news that has made him so divisive over the years. It's his opinion. While Dave has been working in wrestling journalism for almost 50 years, he has also been a wrestling critic as well. Dave Meltzer's star scale has been a contentious point over the years in the world of pro wrestling. Some controversial opinions, like Kurt Angle has no 5-star matches, to his alleged preferences for wrestling that happens in domes in Tokyo. And what people fail to realize is this is just one man's opinion of what he likes in pro wrestling. And because his opinion is not in lockstep with other people, some fans on the internet use that to discredit his wrestling news. And I think that has to do with the parasocial relationships people form with professional wrestlers and professional wrestling companies. Unfortunately, it seems that people today are not looking for news and information to inform themselves. It seems that they're seeking out confirmation bias. And if you're not there to confirm what they already believe, you are just lying. This leads people to do and say things to these journalists through social media like we talked about earlier with Lucas. And I have a feeling this is going to get much worse before it gets better. With WWE and Vince McMahon's sex trafficking allegations, this is going to draw out the entire summer. And I don't want people to fall for misinformation. Let's look at 3 questions you can ask when reading any media, especially pro wrestling media, and ask yourself these questions to discern whether or not the news you are reading is legitimate. Ask yourself, how did you come across this story? If you come across an article titled, "The NWA is the best wrestling company in the entire world," and the username at not Billy Corrigan, you might want to consider the source. Number 2, have you checked with others? By that I mean, have other journalists co-sign that this is happening? Or is it just being repeated by one source? Beware of aggregators, as they are not additional sources, but they are reporting on other reports that people reported on. So look for good journalists. Lastly, ask who benefits from this. And I'm not talking about the journalists themselves. While some journalists have paid subscribers to get news, others bring in money through clicks by having people visit their site. And we've all seen this clickbait type behavior. The thumbnail with the silhouetted person says top WWE star is released, and when you click on it, you find out that WWE is just not re-signing Gable Steveson. Yeah, thanks, you could have saved me the click. I really don't care about this. But that's not the point of their website. The money is not made in informing you. The money is made by having you view the site. But on the other side of that, sometimes the money is to be made in misinforming you. So you have to consider, what is the angle of the story? Who does this story benefit? We have to ask more of our journalists, because a lack of people asking the tough questions is not a recipe for success. By asking the tough questions, we'll get the tough answers, and maybe we can help make pro wrestling a better space. Pro wrestling journalists, you have to start asking the tough questions. We've heard the rumblings for years about the culture at WWE, but it didn't seem like anyone was really asking those questions. Who knows what could have been if the journalist had held WWE responsible by asking them the tough questions. It seems like a good portion of journalists are more concerned with making friends in the world of professional wrestling. And I'm not saying you can't make friends as a journalist, but if your goal is to make more friendships than it is to break news, you're in the wrong business. You are not a reporter, you're a glorified PR person. And speaking of PR people, if the WWE wants to be considered a more legitimate form of entertainment by the global media, by doing press conferences and media calls, don't be surprised when you start getting legitimate questions about your business. That's our show this week. Thank you so much for watching. We're going to leave you with a collection of slow motion footage of Shawn Ross Sapp being choked. You know what? You made it this far. Enjoy it. If you like Shawn, you'll enjoy it. If you dislike Shawn, you'll really enjoy it. Share this video and subscribe to the channel. Remember, pro wrestling is predetermined and your life isn't. Go do something great today. We'll see you next week.